Moving on, 102, we've got the idea of a web application. Now, a web application, I think by now all of us are pretty standardized and familiar with when it comes to Google Docs. That is a web application. There is, on some desktops anyway, you can get links to Google Docs, but essentially everything just runs out of your browser, right? You don't have to install anything. You can just go to docs.google.com and I get Google Docs. You can go to office.com and you can get, the Office or the online rather versions of Office Word, Office Excel, Office PowerPoint, etc. And we're really pretty familiar with those. The idea here is that there are cons, there are negatives to having everything be a web application. The negative side to this is that you don't own the software, you simply use it. Now, we feel like that's a pretty good deal when it comes to Google Docs, right? It's a good deal when it comes to Google Docs because I don't pay for it. We feel like it's an okay deal when it comes to things like Office, so Word online, PowerPoint online, because overtly right now you're not paying for it, but really it's paid for as part of your enrollment in the fee structure here at Rock Valley College. But what happens when you're not in college anymore and you want to use Office 365, for example? Well, Microsoft is happy to let you rent Office 365 forever. And it's absolutely true that the price up front is lower. That's true, right? So if you're just paying $40 a year per license, it doesn't feel like a lot as opposed to buying for $130 a perpetual license. It's called perpetual because it means you never have to buy it again for Office 365. But the problem is after 3 years, you're breaking even. After 4 years, you're paying more, you're paying more, you're paying more. And you do not come out ahead. Companies love to sell you on these subscriptions because you never actually own anything and the company makes more money. So I have a 7-year-old. He's actually 8 now as of yesterday. So I have an 8-year-old and we pay for Disney Plus and we pay for Netflix because there's a ton of content that we watch on there. And someday I'll stop paying for those subscriptions. And at the end of the day, I own none of that content that we have been watching. So all of the Avengers stuff that we are watching presently simply goes away. I have spent money every month for that content to not be mine. That really is the negative of these web applications is there's no ownership there for you. It all just goes away. Just this very month, Sony is getting in trouble for removing content from the Sony Play Store. Content that people have actually paid for, and it's just out of license for Sony. So they're like, you no longer have access to this. Now, people are going to say, you sold me access to this so that I can have that forever. That's probably not going to hold up in court. So people are finding more and more that these services really do not provide you with ownership. They provide you with rentership, which is not the same thing. Now, mentioned here is something called progressive web apps. These are web applications that feel like applications on a desktop computer. They feel like applications on a mobile device, but are in fact not. They are just essentially portals to the web. A very, very popular one is called Flipboard. That's what you can see behind me here. Flipboard is what is called an aggregator. It goes and finds content from the web and it pulls it into one central location. That's here in Flipboard. There are fantastic applications for iOS devices and for Android devices called, you guessed it, Flipboard. And that application is just a portal back here to flipboard.com. This is pretty consistently voted as among the best web or among the best applications for mobile app stores. So on iOS every year, Flipboard is one of the top 10 or 20 downloads every year. On Android, Flipboard is one of the top 10 or 20 downloads, and it's a fantastic way to aggregate news that you select, that you care about, and can, bring content to you either free or of a reduced charge, and that is fantastic. So progressive web apps are simply websites that we treat like applications that you install on either a desktop or a mobile device, and it just essentially gives you access back to that web page. But in the case of things like Office 365, in the case of things like Google Docs, in the case of things like, we see back here, Flipboard, that actually turns out to make a really nice little package that makes sense for your device and still gives you the content that you were looking for.